So I'm 16 years old, a girl, and when I was just a tiny baby, another family adopted me. My birth mom, Karen, was pretty young, in her early 20s, when she had me. I don't know exactly how old she was or what age she is now, but I do know she felt she wasn't ready to take care of a baby at that time. She made the big decision to let another family adopt me. My adoptive parents, who are amazing, don't really know anything about my biological dad or more about my biological family's background. About a month ago, my parents shared with me that my biological mom had gotten in touch, expressing a desire to meet me. They told me it was entirely my choice whether I wanted to meet her or not. Driven by curiosity and a longing to understand why she gave me up, as well as to learn more about my background, like who my dad is, I agreed to meet her. She traveled to our town, and we decided to grab coffee together. She was open to answering any questions, promising to be honest with me. During our meeting, I asked her the big question, why did she give me up? She explained that she was young at the time and believed that having a child would mean giving up on her own future. Later on, she got married and has had quite a successful career as a scientist. I also asked her why, after all these years, she decided to look for me. She told me that she's always been curious about how I turned out, and now that her life is stable, she's interested in having a relationship with me. She mentioned she's had difficulty having more children, which has led her to accept that I'm her only child. To be honest, this part hurt my feelings. It felt like she only started to think of me as her child because she can't have any more children. It seemed like if she hadn't faced those issues, she might not have reached out to me at all. After we had our little coffee meetup, my birth mom, Karen, hits me with this idea that she'd really love for me to come and hang out at her place with her and her husband during my school breaks. I was like, thanks for reaching out and all, and it's cool you answered my questions, but honestly, diving into this deep-end kind of relationship with you just because you're now in a spot where you can't have more kids? Nah, that's not for me. I tried to let her down easy, telling her straight up that I just couldn't do it. Now don't get me wrong, I totally understand that she was just a kid herself when she had me, and honestly, I don't hold any grudges for her choosing to give me up. It's been a whopping 16 years since then. Life's been rolling on fine for me, and suddenly trying to slot her into it feels super awkward, and just not something I'm keen on. After I shared my feelings, she looked super sad, which made me feel kind of bad, but she said she got where I was coming from. Then she headed back to her city. But here's the thing, she keeps texting me, dropping these little hints that she's hoping I'll pop over for a visit. Just the other day, she sends me this pic of these rooms she's decorated in pink VDJ-like, loads of pink everywhere. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm not even into pink. What's this all about? She's all excited, going on about how she can't wait for me to visit. It was pretty obvious she wasn't catching on to how I felt, so I had to spell it out for her a bit more clearly, asking her to please chill with the visit talk, because honestly, it's not happening. I felt a twinge of guilt for having to be so blunt. But at the same time, why should I force myself to keep this conversation going or make plans to visit? I mean, I'm not trying to be mean or hold a grudge because she gave me up VDJ, that's not it at all. It's just that I don't feel this urge to jump into a relationship with her and her husband out of nowhere. It's like, why pretend we have this big connection when it doesn't feel right to me? So, yeah, does that make me the jerk in this scenario? Now for an update. Alright, so here's the deal. I really didn't think I'd be back to spill more tea about this whole situation with my birth mom, and definitely not this quickly, but life's full of surprises, isn't it? So, out of nowhere, I get this call from her. Now keep in mind, I had already shot her a couple of texts asking her to please chill with the whole, let's be a happy family vibe, because honestly, I wasn't feeling it, and she hadn't replied to any of those messages. Then bam, she calls me. She's on the phone, sounding all concerned, asking me to lay it all out for her. Why am I so against giving this mother-daughter bonding thing a shot? Why do I seem like I'm being super cold when she's just trying to get to know me? So I took a deep breath and just went for it. I told her straight up that her saying she suddenly wants to get all cozy with me now, just because she's hit a roadblock with having more kids, kind of makes me feel like I'm just an afterthought. Like, if her life had gone differently and she had a bunch of kids running around, would she even remember I exist? She sort of apologized, saying that she was just being real with me because I asked for honesty. And yeah, I did ask for that. But just because you're being honest doesn't mean I'm going to be over the moon with what I hear. Then she tries to spin this whole thing into a positive, saying that if I could just look past the whole backup plan vibe, I'd see there's a chance for me to gain another mom and dad. They've got all this love and no kids to share it with, apparently. But the way she was talking, trying to make it sound like some great opportunity, it honestly just made me feel more uncomfortable. I told her, listen, I don't need another set of parents. It's kind of messed up to think you can just waltz back into my life whenever it's convenient for you and expect me to jump on board with it. I was pretty blunt saying that to me. She's basically a stranger, and it feels totally bizarre that she wants to be all close and personal just because we share some DNA. I got to admit, I might have come off a bit stronger than I intended, and I felt a twinge of guilt afterward, but it was the raw truth about how I'm feeling. I said before that I wasn't holding any grudges, but after laying it all out like that, maybe I am holding on to a bit of bitterness. It's kind of wild to me that my birth mom decided way back when that chasing her career dreams was more important than sticking around to raise me. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it was a walk in the park for her to make the decision to give me up for adoption. That must have been super tough, but at the end of the day, she chose her job and her future over being there for me as a mom. And you know what? Looking at how everything turned out, it seems like that decision worked out pretty well for both of us. She got to climb the career ladder and achieve her dreams. And I got lucky enough to grow up with the most awesome adoptive parents anyone could ever ask for. So I'm not sitting here bitter about how my life turned out. It's actually been great. But what really gets me is how she thinks we can just snap our fingers and have this perfect mother-daughter relationship just because that's what she wants now. Like, all of a sudden, her wishes are supposed to make everything okay, ignoring what I might feel about the whole thing. I've heard people say stuff like, "Don't burn bridges, you might need her someday." And yeah, maybe they're right. Maybe my feelings will shift over time. But as things stand, I can't shake the feeling that she didn't really think this through in a way that considered what was best for me. It's always seemed like this whole reunion thing was all about her VJ, her needs, and her wants, VGA, without stopping to consider for a second what I might need or want. This whole situation feels like it's been way more about her trying to feel good about herself or fix something missing in her life, rather than genuinely wanting to be there for me in a way that counts. And that's the part that's really hard to swallow. It's not just about her making a big life choice years ago. It's about how she's handling things now, acting like we can just magically make up for lost time because she's suddenly ready to be a mom. So after I finally spilled my guts to Karen about how I was feeling, she actually took it better than I expected. She said she'd back off and not try to hit me up anymore. I did feel a bit guilty for laying it on so thick, so I made sure to apologize for coming off a bit too strong. I really didn't want to make her feel bad or anything because, at the end of the day, I know this isn't easy for either of us. Before we ended the convo, I threw in a big thanks for her decision to put me up for adoption. I mean, thanks to her, I've got this amazing life that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. And with that, it looks like that chapter of my life might be coming to a close. Kind of feels like I might have burned that bridge. But, sometimes that's just how the cookie crumbles, right? LOL. Some of you guys suggested that I should maybe get my adoptive folks to reach out on my behalf just to grab some medical history and maybe some details about my dad's side of the fam. That way, if one day I wake up and decide I want to know more about them, I've got a starting point. I'm fully aware that my way of dealing with this whole thing might not sit well with everyone. Some people might think I could have handled it differently or made different choices, but if I'm being totally honest with you, I'm feeling pretty good about where things stand right now. It's like a weight's been lifted off my shoulders. The whole drama of will we or won't we get to know each other is finally settled, and it's given me a sense of peace. It's kind of nice not to have that constant wonder hanging over my head anymore. If down the road I get curious or feel like I want to reconnect with that side of my family, I'm not exactly sure what my move will be, but hey, I'm not stressing about it. I'll deal with that bridge if I ever come to it, Huge shout out to everyone who dropped some advice my way. Seriously, your support and suggestions have been a big help through all of this. Thanks a ton. So after dealing with all this, I had to take a step back and think about what family really means to me. My adoptive parents, Laura and Mark, have been my rock through everything. They were the ones who held me when I was sick, cheered for me at my school plays, and taught me how to ride a bike. They're the ones who stayed up late helping me with my homework, and who listened to my worries and dreams. It's because of them that I know what unconditional love feels like. One evening, after a particularly long day of texts and calls from Karen, I sat down with my adoptive mom, Laura. We had a heart-to-heart about everything. She told me that no matter what I decided, she and Mark would support me. That meant the world to me. Laura shared some wisdom, saying that sometimes people come into our lives to teach us lessons, and sometimes those lessons aren't easy. She also reminded me that I had every right to protect my peace and choose the relationships that were best for me. Mark, my adoptive dad, chimed in too. He told me that family isn't just about blood, it's about who shows up for you day in and day out. He said that while it's important to be open to new relationships, it's also okay to set boundaries. His words gave me a lot to think about. A few weeks later, Karen sent me another message. This time, she seemed to understand where I was coming from. She apologized again and said she respected my feelings. She promised to give me the space I needed and said she would be there if I ever decided I wanted to reach out. I appreciated that, but I still needed time. In the meantime, I focused on my life. I dove into my studies, spent time with friends, and enjoyed the company of my family. I even started a new hobby, VJ photography. I found that capturing moments through the lens of a camera helped me see the beauty in everyday life and appreciate the people around me even more. One day, while flipping through some old photo albums with Laura, I came across pictures of my childhood. There were pictures of birthday parties, family vacations, and lazy Sunday afternoons. As I looked at those pictures, I realized how lucky I was to have had such a loving and supportive family. It also made me think about what kind of future I wanted for myself and what kind of relationships I wanted to nurture. As the months went by, Karen and I exchanged occasional messages. Our conversations were light and friendly, without any pressure. It felt good to have that kind of relationship, VGA, a relationship on my terms. I started to see her as a person who made a difficult choice and was now trying to make amends in her own way. While I wasn't ready to jump into a full-fledged mother-daughter relationship, I appreciated her efforts and the space she gave me. Reflecting on everything, I realized that life is full of unexpected twists and turns. Sometimes people from our past reappear, and it's up to us to decide how to handle those situations. For now, I'm content with the family I have and the life I'm building. If Karen and I develop a deeper relationship in the future, it will be because it's what we both want and are ready for. So does that make me the jerk? I don't think so. I believe it makes me someone who's trying to navigate a complex situation with honesty and integrity. And for now, that's enough. Now for a different story. Am I the jerk for not wanting to pay for my sister's medical bills? Here's a bit of the backstory to get why I'm even asking. My parents were basically just kids themselves, only 16 when they had me. They were still trying to figure out high school and all that teenage stuff when, boom, I come along. So my dad, he's a real trooper, decides to bail on school and starts working his tail off full-time so he can take care of me, which is super cool because it meant my mom could keep hitting the books and finish high school. But then, plot twist, after she graduates, she suddenly has this big realization that the whole mom gig just isn't her jam. So she pieces out, leaving me and my dad to do our own thing. I was just a little tyke back then, barely old enough to tie my shoes, so I don't have a ton of memories of her hanging around. My dad, though, this guy is my hero. He starts working like there's no tomorrow, pulling triple duty, just so we could get by. And then, when I was around 7, he meets this incredible woman, and she's been in my corner ever since, totally stepping up to the plate. I call her my mom because, well, she's earned that title in every way that counts. I'm going to keep calling her my mom here, just so we're clear on who's who. Now about my bio mom, she's pretty much been MIA, not even dropping a dime our way. The only blip on the radar I got from her was this super brief birthday card when I was 3. But here's the kicker. I never really got bent out of shape over her taking off. I mean, I had my dad, my mom, and my bro who basically turned the whole situation around. They were my squad, filling in any gap she left like it was nothing. My folks, they're class acts, never bad-mouthing her or anything. Honestly, her leaving just wasn't something that hung over me like a dark cloud. Out of the blue, my biological mom, who I haven't heard from in forever, decides to slide into my messages like it's no big deal, wanting to have a chat. Honestly, it knocked me for a loop, and I spent what felt like forever just trying to wrap my head around it. I mean, we're talking 25 years of radio silence, and then boom, she wants to talk. Eventually, I figured why not. So we set up a time to meet at this restaurant, marking the first time we'd laid eyes on each other in a quarter of a century. Talk about awkward. We started with the kind of small talk you'd make with a distant relative you barely know, before finally getting to the real meat of the conversation. Why she bailed all those years ago. She got super emotional, tears streaming down her face as she spilled the beans about her struggles with postpartum depression. She felt like she was trapped in this endless cycle of misery and just couldn't see any way out except to leave. She made it super clear that her leaving had nothing to do with me, which, I'm not going to lie, was a lot to process. But part of me got where she was coming from. I'd seen my own mom battle with postpartum depression after my brother was born, and it was no joke. So hearing her story, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy. After that first meeting, we saw each other a few more times, and then she invited me over to meet her new family. She's remarried now and has 3 kids, VDJ, a teenager, a tween, and a little one still in elementary school. Jump to about a week ago, we met up again, and right off the bat, I could tell something was off. She looked worried, kind of distressed, you know? She didn't beat around the bush and told me straight up that her oldest, the 13-year-old, was dealing with some serious health issues. She kept the details vague, given how sensitive the situation was. But the bottom line was, they were in a financial bind. They needed a whopping $25,000 for medications on top of already piling up $20,000 in medical bills. Then she hit me with the big ask, wondering if I could help foot the bill. After all the hard work and hitting the books, I finally graduated and snagged this diploma that was my ticket to scoring the job of my dreams. The kind of job that not only do I love, but it also pays me pretty darn well. Now it seems like somehow the news of my job and the dough I'm making got out. And guess who comes knocking? My biological mom. It's like she had her radar on, sensing an opportunity from miles away. She reaches out all casual-like and drops this bomb on me, asking for money. But she's clever, right? Gives me some space to think it over, probably hoping I'd come around. But let me tell you, it didn't take me more than a hot minute to see the situation for what it was and slam that door shut with a firm no thanks. The whole thing just reeked of being used. It felt like she wasn't really interested in reconnecting with me for me. It was all about the cash for her other kid, the one she decided to stick with. So I crafted my response, keeping it chill but clear, just shot her a text back saying that I'm not okay with the setup. You'd think that'd be the end of it, right? Oh no. Next thing I know, her husband starts texting me up a storm, throwing insults left and right, basically painting me as the villain of the century. And just when I thought it couldn't get more intense, my bio mom gets back in on the action, sending me these guilt-trippy texts about how I'm being cold-hearted by not helping out my half-sister, like as if I owe them because of some grudge she thinks I'm holding on to. But wait, there's more. Then I start getting all these messages from other family members on her side, all of them chiming in, trying to make me feel bad for not opening up my wallet. So now I'm sitting here, scratching my head, wondering, am I really the bad guy for not wanting to foot the bill for my half-sister's health issues? Now for the update. Hey everyone, just dropping in to say a huge thanks for all the support and advice you've been throwing my way. I really appreciate it. So I wanted to clear the air on a few things and answer some of the questions that have been floating around. I've been doing a bit of sleuthing and found out more about the whole situation with my biological mom and her current family setup. A bunch of you were curious why she decided to have 3 more kids after the rough time she had with postpartum depression when I was born. Here's what I found out. Her and her husband knew pretty early on that their eldest daughter was dealing with a serious illness. They thought if they had more kids, there might be a chance one of them could be a medical match to help out their sick daughter. They ended up having 2 more kids, VJ, a boy, and then another girl, VGJ, with the hope that they could somehow help their older sister, but luck wasn't on their side, and neither sibling was a match. Now, as for me, I've decided to block both my bio mom and her husband from my life. It wasn't like I was on some mission to rebuild or forge some deep mother-daughter connection. I've got a mom who's awesome, and I wasn't out looking for a replacement. My whole thing was about giving my bio mom a chance to explain her side of the story, nothing more. I was never aiming for anything more than just being on good terms, nothing too deep. My adopted family was totally supportive of me meeting my biological parent. It wasn't like I was trying to cause drama or anything. I'm super happy with my family as is, and don't feel like something's missing just because she's not in it. The thing that irks me isn't that she left me back in the day. It's more about how she's acting now. Still, with everything that's gone down, I can't help but feel a bit of sympathy for her, especially knowing she went through postpartum depression. After she left, my dad, my grandparents, and my biological aunt really stepped up to the plate. They've always been upfront about her having her issues with stability and her tendency to manipulate situations. I do feel bad for my half-sister and what she's going through with her health, but I'm not in a place where I can just hand over cash to help out. Sometimes I catch myself thinking maybe I should have just ignored my bio mom's attempt to reach out right from the get-go. Oh, and I also had to block my bio mom's husband because he started making a nuisance of himself by calling me non-stop a while back. Just thought I'd mention that bit too. Asterisk, asterisk, next story. So let me tell you a bit about my situation. Ever since I was 10, it's just been my dad, my younger sister, and me. My brother, who's 5 years older, pieced out as soon as he hit 18, and honestly, my mom's been out of the picture since my parents split when I was the same age. No clue about her, whether she's around or not. Over the years, my dad and I became super tight, but when I was 19, I decided to move out, and let's just say my dad wasn't exactly throwing a party about it. He was really upset and even called me an idiot on moving day. Ouch, right? But as time went by, we patched things up, and I ended up living with my brother for a bit. Then this past June, I made a big move to Tennessee with my boyfriend. We'd been together for over a year, and after he graduated, we decided to start a new chapter there, leaving Kentucky behind. My boyfriend and I both work full-time, and I'm also knocking out my degree online. We're doing pretty good for ourselves. We've got this dream of buying a charter bus, decking it out as a home on wheels, and eventually hitting the road to travel, or maybe even live in it full-time. We've got the finances sorted and are excited about making it happen. So I called up my dad to share our plans, thinking he'd be happy for us. Nope, he lost it. And that's when it hit me that he's always had this explosive reaction to my life choices. My sister had enough of his attitude and cut ties with him when she turned 18, and now I'm starting to get why. I tried to tell him I felt disrespected by his reaction, and all he had to say was, "Boo-hoo, you guys are foolish anyway." It's like, why can't I make my own decisions without him freaking out? Now I'm seriously thinking about moving to Texas, but doing that means I'd be leaving my family behind, except for my boyfriend. His family's been super supportive, though, and he's been an absolute gem through all this. I'm torn and have been pretty upset about the whole thing. I actually know a bunch of people who live in converted buses and travel around, so it's not like we're doing something unheard of. It's becoming pretty popular these days. Update. So there I was in Tennessee, feeling all kinds of ways after the blow-up with my dad over our bus living dream. My boyfriend and I were neck-deep in plans for our charter bus conversion, buzzing with ideas and excitement for this unconventional life ahead. His family support was a solid rock in the crazy current of my own family drama, but that's not even the half of it. Fast forward a couple of weeks, and my phone blows up with a text from my brother Vijaya, the one who bolted at 18 and never looked back. Out of the blue, he's reaching out, saying he heard through the grapevine about my fallout with Dad and wanted to check in. It was weird considering we hadn't really talked much since he left, but life's funny like that, throwing people back into your orbit when you least expect it. Then the plot thickens. My little sister, who also cut ties with our dad, somehow catches wind of this mini reunion and decides it's her cue to re-enter the stage. Next thing I know, we're having this impromptu sibling reunion over video chat, sharing stories, laughs, and a few tears. It was like finding pieces of myself I didn't realize were missing. But wait, it gets crazier. During our catch-up, my brother drops a bombshell. He's been in contact with our mom. Yeah, the same mom who was pretty much a ghost for most of our lives. Turns out she's been trying to make amends, going through some program that's all about fixing broken bridges. My initial reaction was a cocktail of skepticism and curiosity. After all, this was the woman who checked out when I was just a kid. But then there's this tiny spark of hope, wondering if there's a chance for some kind of reconciliation. Meanwhile, back in Tennessee, my boyfriend and I are knee-deep in bus renovation. We're talking full swing into tearing down, building up, and turning this hunk of metal into a home. It's hard, sweaty work, but man, is it fulfilling. Every bolt we tighten, every inch we insulate, feels like we're building not just a home, but a future on our terms. Just as we're making headway, Dad calls. I'm bracing for another blow-up, but instead, His voice cracks through the phone, heavy with something I can't quite place, VJ regret maybe. He's heard about the sibling reunion, about mom trying to get back in touch, and something in him just shifts. He talks about being alone, about how his anger pushed everyone away, and for the first time, he says he's sorry, like genuinely sorry. It's a lot to process. In the middle of all this emotional whirlwind, my boyfriend's family throws us an engagement party. Yep, you read that right. My angel of a boyfriend popped the question one quiet night under the stars, with our half-built bus as the backdrop. It was perfect in an imperfect us kind of way. His family's joy for us was a balm on the sting of my own family's fractured past. So here I am, caught between past hurts and future hopes, building a home on wheels with the love of my life, reconnecting with siblings, and navigating the rocky road of possibly letting my parents back into my life. It's messy, it's beautiful, it's terrifying, and it's exhilarating all at once. The bus is coming along, slowly transforming into a space that's all ours. We've got plans to hit the road, explore the country, and find new adventures. But more than that, we're building a life that's about forgiveness, about choosing which bridges to mend and which paths to take. I'm learning that family isn't just about blood or shared history. It's about who shows up, who sticks around through the storms, and who helps you build your dreams, even if those dreams are as unconventional as living in a converted bus. As for Texas, it's still on the table. The idea of starting fresh, of carving out a space in the world where we can just be, is more appealing than ever. But no matter where we end up, I know we'll have a home on wheels, in each other's hearts, and in the family we choose both given and found along the way. Life's a wild ride, but I wouldn't have it any other way.